and thank you so much for joining us for another episode of the Home Tech Podcast. Jason Griffin here. So happy to have you with us. We're excited to share this episode. We had Domenico Crapanzano on from Domots, and this is an interview that we've been looking forward to sharing with our audience for quite some time, and we'll get into a few more of the details there. But before we go any further, I want to make sure to introduce my partner in crime here, Seth Johnson. Seth, how's it going?
Oh, man, I'm absolutely drained today. I have been in Elan training all day long.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Well, how'd that go?
Pretty good. They have an interesting product. I haven't seen Elan in the better part of a decade. The last time I touched Elan product, it was like the Z series stuff. So we were like the Z100, Z600, Z keypads that were just insanely fun to not program correctly. And
right.
Yeah, I mean, it was old stuff. You couldn't break it; it never would die. So I think it's probably still working in people's homes if the equipment on the other end hadn't died. But it's an interesting product. Since I hadn't used it in so long, I haven't realized how much they have done with the platform that they have now, and you can do a whole lot with it. I'm reminded of what Savant is trying to do, where you can kind of like customize elements of the interface. You can really get down and customize this interface, although it does kind of tie your hands a little bit. Like it won't let you do crazy stuff. But one of the biggest surprises they had were their HDMI and video distribution products, video and audio distribution products for that matter. In the past, they had always been really good and easy to work with, and they've got some pretty cool HDMI matrices that exist in their product line that have full HD base T extenders with these really nice baluns on the other end. So I was pretty impressed with what I saw.
Very cool. Yeah, I'm not personally familiar with the line. I know I've been hearing quite a bit about it over the last few years, and I know they're a company that's been around for a while, and they've definitely managed to stick around, and I know they're very popular in certain segments of the market. So I'm excited to learn that you're working with them. I'll be curious to hear your thoughts on Elan moving forward.
Yeah, I found out today they also have a Lua third-party developer platform that I don't know if it's completely open. Maybe there's like some NDAs that you have to sign for it, but that's exciting for me because Control4 has a Lua API as well, and I've been writing against that for, I don't know, 4 or 5 years, I guess. I'm not sure how long it's been out, but I'm familiar with the language, so I can get in and kind of maybe do some development work on it.
Great. Well, keep us posted. Let's dive into the show here. Like I mentioned, we had Domenico on from Domots, and if you're not familiar with Domots, definitely stay tuned. It's a very cool product, a remote monitoring tool and a system management tool geared at professional integrators, but really a benefit to end users and consumers as well. And we really enjoyed our conversation with Domenico. So again, make sure you stay tuned for that. We've got a handful of news stories here that we're going to touch on before we get into that interview. And the first broad story that we want to touch on is just continued drama at Nest. And, I really hate to make this show feel like a soap opera, but really that's kind of what Nest has become.
Yeah, this story, we touched on it last week. I felt like it was bleeding in from the previous week, and it's still here with us this week. This is getting crazy. The first thing I saw was a story on Recode, which said that 2 Nest executives are leaving. One of them is actually the hardware engineering chief, which is kind of that exodus that we've been talking about from Nest. Not sure what the rumors are. It seems to me like there's where there's smoke, there's fire. So I don't know how bad it is to work at Nest. Like you go to Glassdoor and look at it, and it looks like they've got some pretty good ratings and better than some places that I've worked. But it's very interesting to see these many people just kind of like either leaving the company or speaking out and saying. People that have been involved with the company speaking out and saying something about it.
Right.
Nest is no longer the darling, I guess, of home automation.
It feels like it just took this massive shift overnight. And in fairness, this Recode story does talk about 2 execs leaving. There's one named Shige Hanjo, and I'm sure I'm butchering that pronunciation, but he's the hardware chief that you were alluding to. And I did want to mention that it looks like he's going to stay working for Tony Fadell in some capacity, at least. The article mentions that he'll be shifting over to Google to work on the next iteration of the Glass wearable, and they're saying it's dubbed Project Aura internally. And then after that, it says in parentheses, he'll continue to work for Nest CEO Tony Fadell, who runs Aura independently of Nest. I had no idea. I think that's kind of interesting. So his, I guess, isn't so much of an exodus, but a shift. But all the same, everything else that we've been hearing about the company has been really, really negative, decidedly negative in the last couple of weeks. And I think it just is a sad story, really. I mean, it was such so much potential there squandered. And you just think about all the talented people that really could have spent the last couple of years working on putting something together really special, right? And it just has been squandered. And I just think it's a shame.
Yeah. There's actually another. I was reading that article while you were talking. And there's another link in Enrico talking about the budgeting deal that Nest got, and what Nest is actually selling. It says the budgeting deal when the sell went down between Nest and Google, there was a term set for 3 years, and according to multiple sources familiar with the deal, unless Alphabet agrees to continue funding Nest, the budget runs out at the end of this year. And then they say several sources said the initial budget was around $500 million annually. So $500 million annually, and according to this story, they're only making and bringing in about $300 million, which we also saw.
Yeah.
These numbers also fall in line with a post that popped up on Reddit and then was promptly either deleted or the account was deleted. I'm not sure. But once it was out there on Reddit, the internet just took a hold of it and went crazy.
Did its thing. Yeah. And this is we've decided I'm going to go ahead and read this whole post, I think, word for word. It's not super long, but I think it just is interesting enough to spend a couple minutes on. And like you said, it was on Reddit and allegedly, at least from a Nest engineer. And he says, as a Nest engineer, I won't say any numbers that aren't public, but this company is already on death watch. Once that happens, most people will quickly have a shiny paperweight because it's a constant firefight keeping these systems up. We have $340 million in revenue, not profit, against a roughly $500 million budget. No new products since the purchase, and sales/growth numbers are dire. Our budget deal expires soon, and all the good engineers on my teams have discreetly indicated that they are going to flee once their golden handcuffs unlock. Many have already left, despite sacrificing a ton of money to do so. Tony and his goons demand crazy timelines so much that crunch time has basically lost meaning. Just when your labor bears fruit, they swoop in, 180 the specs they just delivered on, then have the gall to call your team incompetent for not reading their minds and delivering on the brand new specs. I waste most of my time in pointless meetings or defending my team so they don't flip their desks and walk out. People fall asleep in corners and they cry in the bathrooms. Health and marriages are suffering. Already, the churn is insane. Close to half of the company is, if not more. Skilled engineers can tell the environment is toxic, so we're filling vacancies with mostly subpar talent. And man, if there's any truth to this at all, it is quite an indictment.
Yeah. Again, where there's smoke, there's possibly fire here, and like you said, this is an anonymous post on the internet, but some of the things line up with about good engineers leaving, people leaving over time. Some of these stories I've heard, people crying in bathrooms, asleep in corners, the crazy deadlines. Evidently Nest, I think Mike Wolf was talking about this. Nest had a security product that they were going to announce. Do you remember when they bought Dropcam and Dropcam had just come out with those tabs?
Yep.
Then Nest canceled the whole tabs program, which were these little remote sensors. Mike Wolf was saying that Nest had a security product in the line, and for whatever reason, they haven't been able to deliver that.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
and Stacey
this does not look
Higginbotham,
good.
Yeah, Stacey Higginbotham had an article on Fortune just last week that referenced a piece from The Information, a profile that was written by a website called The Information on the company. And they talked specifically about that security offering. And according to that piece by The Information, really the delays have all been due to dithering at the highest levels, and people like Tony Fadell and his top brass there have just not been able to make up their minds about what the product is supposed to look like. And so, like you said, where there's smoke, there's fire. It just seems like everything is consistent with what we're hearing about Nest, and it is just really a surprising turn if you just look back even a couple months ago to predict that this sort of negative press would just be surrounding, literally enveloping the company. I don't think anybody really saw that coming from the outside, at least.
Yeah, and all of this kind of it's kind of a perfect storm here, because we'll link to this story in the show notes. It's got a great title. I'm going to read the title here: "The Time That Tony Fadell Sold Me a Container of Hummus."
And if that doesn't get you to click, I don't know what will.
Yep. So this is about the Revolve Hub, and the reason we're seeing so many stories about the Revolve Hub come out is because Google has announced that the Revolve will be shutting down. I think it's May 15th. And when they shut down the servers on May 15th, the Revolve service will no longer available, and the Revolve Hub will no longer work. That as the guy goes on to say, a tub of hummus is infinitely more useful than my Revolve Hub at that point.
That's great. That's a brilliant title, and unfortunate. I'm really thankful. Like we've talked about it before, Seth. I was eyeing the Revolve. I was pretty close at one point in time to pulling the trigger on one of them, and frankly, I don't remember exactly why I didn't. But so I can't attribute that to any sort of foresight on my part. But I'm sure glad that I didn't pull the trigger on that.
Yeah, I think what's amazing to me is like I think we've been seeing this like. We all knew this was coming. Like, I feel like these stories that were posted up everywhere today were just kind of like hit pieces and kind of like piling on to something that really isn't a scandal. Like, we all knew that Revolve was being shut down. It was an acqui-hire.
That's very true. Yeah, we've known that for a while.
And what's funny is like Tony Fadell didn't even make Revolve. It was Mike Susi. We've had him on the show in the past, and when he was actually with Revolve. So, like. This all seems like it's all coming out just at the worst of times. I do think the way this is going to end up manifesting itself is going to be probably, you can't have this many PR black eyes in the matter of a couple of weeks and come out unscathed. There's probably going to be some management changes at Nest, I think.
Oh yeah, no, I think that's a pretty safe prediction and certainly one that we'll be keeping an eye on. But let's. Unless, Seth, you have anything else to add, let's move on from the Nest soap opera. And we've got a couple more stories here before we jump into our interview with Domenico. And one that we wanted to write about was a pretty vicious piece, actually, that I saw in Seeking Alpha. And this was about Control 4. And so Seeking Alpha is a site devoted to stock analysis. And this was an analyst, I think, giving his honest opinion about Control 4, and I don't think necessarily that he set out to make it sound like a hit piece. I think that he honestly believes everything he wrote, but man, this thing read pretty vicious.
It did, and you get on the second page, and it's like, to be clear, I am shorting Control 4, so I guess he's selling his point, right?
Sure, yeah, fair enough.
So he's got a funny little summary here, which I'm going to go ahead and read because it's very, very short. January cut controller costs by 40%. They didn't cut controller prices by 40% at all. In fact, they introduced very, very expensive controllers on the high end, but they did introduce a low-cost bundle at the low end, which is awesome.
And that's a great thing, right? It's a great thing for the market. I saw that piece and thought the same thing. He's basically taking Control 4's, if I understand what he's saying, he's essentially spinning the fact that Control 4 came out with a lower priced, entry market solution and spinning that as they're slashing prices in response to increased competition.
Right. I mean, the EA1 is a single room solution. It can do a lot more, but it's designed to compete on a price point with basically universal remotes, that
right.
Don't do anything more than control your TV. And EA1 can do door locks, lighting control, all the fun stuff that an EA5 could do. So has a couple smaller features inside of it, but it's it's a full blown Control 4 processor. So I think that point needs to be just taken off. That's ridiculous. Amazon now making a huge push into home automation with the Echo platform. Now that one I didn't think was valid, but we're gonna have to talk about that coming up.
Yeah, we're gonna get to that in a second, right? That'll be our last story that we want to touch on before the interview. But yeah, that was an interesting twist to that one.
Yeah. When this article came out, there definitely wasn't the news that we had just today, maybe a couple hours before the show started. And they I guess the third bullet point he has, just made a questionable acquisition. He's talking about PackEdge that consumed half of its cash. So half the cash on hand, I think I read in there, it was like $30-something million they paid for PackEdge. I thought that was pretty interesting. There's one more bullet point, which is basically saying that since there's a different mix and shift in the market, then there's going to be fewer controllers sold, which is what Control 4 says, hey, we sold X amount of controllers every month. I don't know. We'll see what that looks like. But there's one bullet point he made very bottom of the page that I found very interesting, and I'm not sure what to make of it. I'm going to go ahead and read it. The CEO, CFO, the VP of Marketing, VP of Business Development, and VP of Product Development collectively own 0 common shares. Now, it's common shares. I don't know about the other type. It's also rather telling that PackEdge totally cashed out and did not take any stock in the deal. Not favorable signals or incentives. I don't know what to think about that one. That bullet point of all the stuff that they had on here, I mean, Q1, we all know Control 4 has bad Q1s because of the holiday season, slowdown construction. It's a good time to hit them and short them.
Yeah,
because it's an easy target. But I don't know about this last one. I don't know either.
We're not a money show, I think we're going to have to source this one out to the audience. There's got to be somebody listening who has a better understanding than me or you about common stock and what we should read into that. I'm with you. I honestly have no idea. I think it's interesting, but I don't know what to make of it. I think that overall, this guy's clearly very, very bearish on Control 4 and the, I guess, quote unquote, traditional smart home. He sums it up. The bullet point, Seth, that you referred to right above that, I believe in the article, he had a quote that says, the below developments ordered by Severity should make it clear that Control 4's product is officially obsolete and its demise nearing. So that pretty much that pretty much sums up the whole article. It was a pretty brutal piece, and I suppose if you're gonna be in the top executive leadership of a publicly traded company, I guess you got to have some pretty thick skin. That was my main takeaway from the article.
Yeah, I mean, there's no hummus in this article, but it's still pretty brutal.
There's no hummus. There is no hummus. Well, let's move on. We alluded to it briefly. We got one more story here before our interview, and that is some breaking news today on the Amazon Echo front.
Yeah, so I was sitting in a lawn training, and across my Twitter feed comes this little news story from the Amazon developer website. Amazon enables developers to extend Alexa's smart home capabilities. A new addition to the Alexa Skills Kit. Now, what this is basically saying, in the past, you've had to make some pretty awkward things to basically, to talk to certain devices. So I think you had to ask certain devices to do things. So you'd have to say, like, Alexa, ask the Hue lights to turn off the kitchen lights. So that sentence structure is just so
makes no
awkward.
Sense. Right.
Yeah. Now you'll just be able to say, Alexa, turn on the kitchen lights, or Alexa, turn up the heat. You don't have to make this crazy, goofy sentence that basically it triggers off these programming. So I think this is huge. This is very big. It's going into beta, and it's being called the Alexa Lighting API and the Smart Home Skill API. Mm-hmm. So hopefully we'll see this soon, and hopefully we'll see some pretty deep integrations with other products at this point, because this is big. I think Alexa was more of a toy before. Now they're getting serious.
Yeah, I wonder if when they first came out with Alexa and the Echo, if they really realized what they were onto, but they've really struck a chord, and I think you're absolutely right. I think this is a very big deal. I think I've been, over the couple of years we've been doing this show, I've been starting to turn the corner on voice control a little bit. And I think Amazon and Alexa are showing us what the future of that could look like. But I still think one of the big roadblocks to that has still been awkward sentence structure and having to over enunciate everything and repeat yourself. And so the more natural that these commands can be made and systems can be made to understand natural language the way we normally speak to one another is obviously huge. And so I think this is a very big deal. I know you also, Seth, had another Amazon thing. I saw you sent out a tweet, and it looks like you came across an interesting end cap.
Yeah, I was at Lowe's. You can tell I'm working on the house again because I'm at Lowe's.
Right.
Yeah, okay. So I was walking through, and I noticed an end cap that had an Amazon Echo for sale. I'll put a link to this in the show notes. But I thought it was interesting because, one, I hadn't heard that Amazon would be doing this, and two, Amazon is like not. When you think Amazon, it's not brick and mortar. Like, what the heck is this doing in here? And then three, it's a home improvement store. Like, clearly, it's in the middle of a home improvement store. They probably have some broader goals to push into home automation, like we've been hearing. So that kind of floored me, and I think I tweeted out to Richard Gunther and Mike Wolf to see if they had heard anything about it, and didn't really get any feedback from them. So I think this is something that's just really new that I came across, or I don't know. Be interested to see if anybody else saw this stuff in their local Lowe's. Yeah,
well, it may have been just recently, but as I was looking at this tweet just before we hit record here on the show tonight, I did see a comment from Mike Wolf and Richard, actually. And Mike Wolf said the impact of Echo is clearly reverberating at retail, and then put in parentheses, sorry. So apparently he was making a pun there.
Oh, it's a horrible one.
Yeah. And I think Richard had seen maybe some small point of sale displays, but never a whole end cap. So it sounds like you did see those comments. But what you're saying is we really don't have any super specific information about where this stemmed from and where they're going with it. But I do think it's interesting. You know, you think of Amazon selling products on the internet that would traditionally be sold in brick and mortar. So it's almost like the roles have been reversed here, right?
Yeah, it's strange, and I'm excited to see this happen. You and I have talked a lot. I think one of our first shows was on voice control. That we had, one of our very first interviews we had was on voice control, and how I'm okay with it. I've never really thought it was all that great, but where it really takes off for me, and what I really see is like the ability to control your home if you're disabled and you can't actually physically turn on a light switch. There was actually a great story in CE Pro. One of Daniel Radcliffe's stuntmen was actually injured and paralyzed on the very last Harry Potter movie. And for life, he was paralyzed for life, and now he's building a smart home. So we'll throw a link up for that. But I think like integration with an Amazon Alexa, if they can come out with that, or Amazon Echo, if they come out with that and bring it into somebody's home like that, oh man, that changes the way they actually can live their life, which is huge. Very true.
Yeah, very good point. I mean, these stories call to mind. We talked about the continued problems at Nest, and now we've talked about the momentum of Amazon. And I actually, shameless plug here, put up a blog post this week at hometech.fm/blog where I talked about how it turns out the smart home is kind of difficult. And I only briefly mentioned Amazon in there because they seem to be the exception to the rule, in the sense that they're actually gaining momentum in the smart home. We're really seeing a lot from them. Most of the article focused on really the continued challenges that we've seen at Nest, the absence of any movement with HomeKit, and some of the recent stumbles of SmartThings as well. So you've got big initiatives there from Google, Apple, and Samsung that really have all stalled out. And I feel like 2016 is kind of a seminal year in the smart home, and we'll see if these companies can turn the corner or not. And so I think that's definitely an interesting conversation, and it seems to be coming up more and more in the last couple of months. But
yeah, and I want to touch on HomeKit, because HomeKit is so similar to what Amazon is doing with Alexa here. The Siri carrot was dangled over Apple developers, and they did not bite. And I think it's for a number of reasons. One like the hacking just couldn't take place because you either were developing an iOS app, like it has to be almost a flawless app, and it has to be developed in Objective-C or their new programming language Swift, which is, has to take off first too. That's a lot harder to do than it is to develop in, I think, JavaScript, which is what the Echo is being developed in. And then the second thing is, Richard Gunther actually was talking about this on his last show, and I will put a link to it in the show notes. He was talking about a product that he's using, and I can't find it in his show notes, but I'm sure if you listen to the show, it's a really good show. He and Mike Wolf are both on it at South by. And he's talking about a security product, a security app that he uses that's HomeKit compatible, and it has all of the rules engine that he wants built into a HomeKit app. So he can do some pretty advanced things in programming just straight through the app, and he doesn't actually have to use that particular brand of products. He can use any other HomeKit compatible product, which is what I've always thought of was like the dream of HomeKit. But it just hasn't materialized, like you've been saying. So that unfortunately hasn't happened. And I think Alexa has hit a home run, or Amazon has hit a home run here, and we're going to see some pretty cool stuff come from it. Yeah,
absolutely. Well, without further ado, let's jump into the interview. Just one last very quick thing before we do. I want to mention, if you're a fan of Home Tech and you want to hear more from us periodically, hop over to the website, hometech.fm, and on the right-hand side, you'll see a sign-up form for our email list. We're really encouraging our listeners to sign up for that. We're sending out weekly show reminders and also, putting out some different pieces every week with some thoughts on what's going on in home technology. So definitely hop over to the website, hometech.fm, and sign up for that if you have a minute. We'd love to have you. And without any more delay, let's go ahead and jump into our interview. Once again, we had Domenico on, and Domenico is the founder of Domots, which is a very interesting product that we look forward to sharing the conversation with you. So let's get started. Hey, Domenico, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you.
Very good. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to join us. This is a conversation that Seth and I have been looking forward to for some time. We've been hearing an awful lot about Domots lately. You guys seem to be generating a lot of buzz, and I think that's a great thing. And so we're excited to dive in and talk about the product with you. But before we do that, why don't you give our listeners just a brief, a personal introduction and maybe some of your background prior to being involved with Domots?
I am a gadget freak, and I have basically been the connected consumer. I have 200 devices at home, times 2 because I have 2 places. And I've been using this stuff for a long time, and I always had problems with it. So I was looking for solutions to my own problems. That's how I started the company. My background is actually in finance. I was a fixed income trader for 23 years, staring at data in front of screens until I got bored and decided that there was something better in life. So it's a passion that I'm following.
Very cool. Very cool. No, that's great. It's an interesting backstory, and certainly not one that I would have expected to hear. So I think that's really cool. We've got a lot of ground to cover here, and I definitely want to do a deep dive into the product. But before we do that, give us just the really quick, maybe couple of sentences elevator pitch. What exactly is Domots?
Domots is a software to deliver remote support and assistance into a smart home or a smart office. Essentially, it's something that gives you awareness of what electronics is present in a remote location. And it provides connectivity to that remote location. It allows you to reach any device remotely, whether it's a computer, printer, web interface, or anything basically out there. So it's really something to help you with delivering service and making sure things work.
Very good, and I think that's obviously a very important value proposition. Before we get into more of the details about the specific product, tell us how many people are involved with the team, and where are you guys based out of?
We are based in London. There's 22 of us. We're about to become 25 very soon, actually. Half of the team is actually based in Italy, in Pisa. Most of the development is actually in Pisa. And most of the kind of commercial and admin is based in London. We will be opening in the US in September.
Very nice, very nice. So I think you kind of mentioned it a little bit earlier, but where'd you get the idea for Domots?
Yeah, no, as I was saying, it comes out of both a passion and a need that I had because, as I said, I mean, I guess I'm a prosumer more than a consumer, but I bought enough technology to kit up my house that I basically started a dealership in Control 4 because it was more convenient to do that for as much as I was buying. And I installed it all myself. And I got 16 miles of cabling, 270 jacks on my rack. So, yeah, I needed something that could help me troubleshoot problems at home with my network, because if my network goes down, I have a problem because I have lighting, heating, security, gates, intercom, phone. Everything is dependent on it. So, short of hiring somebody to manage this setup, I thought there was a better way to do it. I looked around. I didn't see anything that I loved. And so I decided to build something. And then, that's where it started.
Very cool. Yeah, I think I've looked into some of the open source solutions out there. There's a lot of stuff for the enterprise. Like if you're doing data center monitoring, I mean, there's a lot of stuff out there for that, but it's very, very, very technical. And the trick with these kind of products is always to make it easy, simple, either to both deploy and to use later on down the road. And I think from what I've seen, it looks like you guys have done that. So we've talked a little bit. It sounds like you are an extreme power user, is where I would put you on our little scale from simple, do it yourself all the way up to the pro level. I think you've moved well into the pro level, my friend. What do you think the target market is for Domots?
I started this with people like me in mind, i.e. the consumers. And I did everything wrong because this is my first startup, and probably my last one. But I didn't ask anything to anybody. I just went out and built what I thought I needed, and then I put it out. And after 11 months, we put it out in the market, and I realized it was going to be very hard to find consumers like me, or very expensive for what we price, because our mantra is actually has to be affordable and cheap. And then I went to, and this was like October, November last year, and then I went to Las Vegas at CES, and I discovered that, there was a lot of professionals that loved this and loved the idea. So we came back from Vegas and basically turned what we had into a professional product. So I think what we have today is really it's something for the CEDIA market, for the professional market, or for, the souped-up prosumer or high-end consumer, I would say, that wants to have some fun.
Yeah, that's great. I love the backstory, actually, and I think the fact that you set out first to build something for the consumer and only then shifted to making it a professional product, if anything, probably lends itself to a better feature set, because you really want to have that end user in mind, even if you are building a product for the CEDIA channel or the professional installers such as myself or Seth. You alluded to your mantra, and I've seen it all over your guys' website, and it seems to be something you're really hammering home, is the importance of making this technology very affordable. What can you tell us about your pricing model?
Well, it's a bet, because I think right now the remote monitoring and servicing is not really taking off because of price. Because when you charge, $30, $40, $50 per location, then that only really can attract, not even the 1%, but the 0.01%. So my bet is that by lowering the price to something that is, a cup of coffee, you will unlock a market, which I think exists because technology is getting into people's home. Doesn't matter. I mean, you don't need to have 200 devices. Everybody's got a digital life. Everybody uses that broadband line. I think I've heard that home network is now the fourth utility, and it's replacing the phone. So I think a lot of people have the need of having technology work inside the home, and I think there is. I think I want to ride that wave, and I think the key is making it affordable. So, and it works as long as I have volume. So I need a lot of homes. We'll see where my bets goes.
Sure. Well, we've asked a number of questions here, and sort of assuming loosely, at least, that some people are familiar with Domots, and let's zoom out just a little bit and speak to somebody who may not be familiar with Domots at all, but might know who some of your competitors are. I think that's typically a good way for people to make that association and figure out exactly what it is you do and what you're providing. So to that end, I'd love if you could touch on who do you see as some of your main competitors out there right now, and what differentiates Domots and makes it a better offering?
Well, I mean, the closest competitor, obviously, which I'm sure everybody knows, is Hiigi. Actually, I had somebody at CS called us the Hiigi for consumers, so that was a compliment. And there's other companies, Krika in France. There's OVRC, which is coming up with something similar. There's other companies like Greenlight that are providing some of this functionality. It's very specific to home automation, not to home networks. So there's a couple of players, but there's really a really small market, and I think it's touching. It's barely touching the surface. I think the potential is like so much bigger than what people are using right now, and that's again because of price. So in terms of difference, I mean, the first one is price, clearly. Against some of the more common ones. I mean, we, for example, IAG scans on IP address level. We scan over, we find devices over MAC address level, which is unique. So if you have DHCP on, your devices keep on changing IP address, you keep on discovering new devices, with other systems and not ours because we have a unique identifier.
That's great. I think that's actually really cool.
Yeah, that's definitely one thing. We are, the user interface is completely different. We started from the ground up, i.e. from the consumer and went up, as opposed to starting from a business kind of network admin perspective and going down. We are, out of 23 people, we got 16 and a half developers. So that's a pretty decent skew towards, I have one marketing person and myself, so we're definitely light there, and we need to do something about that as well. But we also are mobile based, so we come in an app, which is not something which most people offer. We've been spending a lot of the 4 months that we so far to really catch up on the gap with I think all our competitors, and I think we're very close to filling most of those gaps and go beyond. For example, one of the features we're going to announce soon is the ability to automate port mapping. So if you have a managed switch and you plug in your Apple TV on port 3, I already know that it's an Apple TV. You don't have to tell me that. And if you move it to port 4, I'm going to automatically move it for you. So that kind of stuff. So, I mean, it's all about ease of use, frankly, and trying to make it accessible, because a lot of, the CDI professionals don't necessarily have a computer science degree. And I think if you make it easier for people, it's better. And also another thing that will make us different is we're very kind of device centric. So, for example, if you have to turn something on or off, normally you would have to go to the PDU screen to turn it on and off. Whereas I show you in the same page the device and the power to turn it on and off, and the information from the managed switch. So I bring all the information to the device from a user perspective rather than from a network perspective. So we try to make it easy.
Yeah. I was just kind of looking over your interface. It looks like you guys have done a real good job of putting something that can be kind of complex, like the things that the enterprise level ones I'm thinking of, and the open source ones I'm thinking of, like the SMTP monitors and that kind of thing. Those are very, very complex. There's graphs. Jason and I discussed at length about graphs last week. It seems like they're very IT center oriented when I've gone out and messed with them. But this one looks very friendly, and I think that goes a long way. Like you said, not everybody out there has a computer science degree or an IT background. So it really does help go a long way to set something like this up and to make it easy to set up, and then also make it easy to continue using, which I think looks like you've done. Let's talk no problem. Let's talk a little bit about some of the devices that you can monitor with Domots. You mentioned PDU, which is, if anybody doesn't know, that's power distribution unit, right? Like that's a managed outlet, essentially, that you can remotely turn on and off individual outlets on. What else?
Well, I mean, we basically see any IP device on a network. We build specific functionality for the PDUs, so for the IP powered plugs. We build specific functionality for the SNMP switches, which we're going to release in the next couple of weeks. But also what we provide is actually we provide connectivity to the original interface of any device. So if a device has a web interface that is only accessible locally, then by clicking on the device, I open a web page, from the cloud, from anywhere I am, and reach that device. If there is a computer on the other side, I actually log into that computer as if it was log me in or go to my PC. If it's a console or telnet or SSH, so console access, I actually get into those consoles. So basically, I can as long as it talks, I can talk.
Wow, yeah.
So I either by building specific integration, if it makes sense, and some of it you're not even seeing. I mean, that's going to come later in the year, but we're developing against the Nest and the Sonos and some of the voice over IP phones. So to actually bring out information. Basically, essentially, everything that is in my home, I'm developing against because I need it. So, if a trunk of my voice over IP is offline, it will show up so that I have to, find out when I'm making a phone call that it's not working. So we're trying to give a minimum, connectivity to everything, a minimum integration on, many things like switches and PDUs and stuff like that. And then on some of the most popular electronics, we're actually going to start developing, deeper integration.
Very cool. One thing we've talked about a lot here is the software side of Domots, but it needs some hardware to run on, and you guys have come up with some novel ideas or interesting ideas about what to run that on. Tell us a little bit about that.
We're Linux-based, and again, my idea was I want to sell software, and I just want to make it easy for people to get it to them. So we started off the easiest thing, which was a Raspberry Pi. We need a host to run our software 24/7. So if somebody has a virtual machine, they can run it over there. But most people, they just buy a Pi, and we can sell them to them for whatever, $69, which is slightly above cost, but basically it's a cost. Or people can just buy their own and just download the software for free. We also support a number of NAS in Synology, QNAP, and Netgear. We're actually going to be on the QNAP store, official QNAP store, very shortly, and there's going to be some press release on that. We're also going to be on the Synology store, hopefully before the summer.
Nice.
So that should actually increase the applicability of this. We're also coming out in May with our own box, which is slightly different than the Pi because it's a more solid hardware. It's Intel based. It has. I mean, the biggest difference between that and the Pi is the fact that we have onboard memory, flash of 4 gig eMMC storage on board, whereas the Raspberry Pi is using an external SD card, and the SD card, at the frequency with which we write, can deteriorate over the course of 2-3 years, whereas our software, our hardware is basically rock solid in that sense. Also, the Pi is 100 megabit, whereas our hardware, our box, is going to be 1 gig speed on the Ethernet port. So there's a couple of nuances, but essentially, if you're doing it for a client, I mean, and then we got our own casing, our own. It's a computer. We're selling a computer for $100. So I think it's a good deal, to be honest with you. So
yeah. Yeah, that's a great deal, and I love the fact that you're providing those options at pre-configured installations. I think that there's a lot of people out there who would be perfectly capable of buying their own Raspberry Pi and installing the software themselves, but a lot of those people are also people that are extremely busy and don't want to be bothered with that. And so I think that having the pre-configured hardware is really a no-brainer, and I think a great business decision and probably a pretty obvious one. And the pricing is very compelling. I mean, you look at this, and you're looking at the Domots box for, what'd you say, was it $100?
Well, the MSRP is $150, but we're providing 30% discount to dealers, so that's $150.
Gotcha.
So,
and then you've got a few dollars a month, right, to monitor each individual network, and you're pretty much off and running at that point.
Yes, we don't have any limits on the number of devices. We actually also include VLAN support, and right now we're not limiting the number of VLANs. I mean, we're gonna we have a fair usage policy. So if you're putting an entire complex building on
right.
VLANs, we'll probably turn you off.
Yeah.
But, if you got voice over IP on one and something else on the other, you knock yourself out. I mean, we're
gotcha.
Fine.
One other question I wanted to ask you on the hardware side is I noticed on the website it lists routers as coming soon. So you'll apparently be able to run your software on routers. What can you tell us about that?
We are going to launch support for the Synology router very soon, which I think it's a nice machine. It's Linux based. It was relatively. We just had to be skinnier to fit in there, and we're going to keep on getting skinnier to fit in more places. But essentially, as long as we get some processing power and some memory to play with in most routers, frankly, we can get there, and it's an easier way. It's one less box to have, and it's a nice place to be the router.
Right. Yeah, the router makes a ton of sense, and so I thought that was interesting and wanted to ask you about that specifically. Let's talk about kind of the user experience a little bit as far as the notifications and alerts that you're getting when the network may be having trouble. What sort of notifications are you able to receive generally, and how much ability to customize those notifications do the users get?
Well, right now we're kind of scratching the surface on this because we only provide status alerts, i.e. On-off, and we do it on two different levels. We have a heartbeat concept, and we have a status off, a status down concept. And the heartbeat, essentially, we're sending 5, let's call them pings, so they're not exactly pings, but 5 calls to every device every 30 seconds. And if at least one comes back, the heartbeat is on. And if you miss a heartbeat, one of the things that I found in my experience on these other monitoring services is the false alarm that are generated that really turning that thing off. So we check on 4 heartbeats missed before we actually give an alert going out. We are going to be, as we evolve towards SNMP and support more SNMP, we are going to put alerts on SNMP levels. This is probably going to be after the summer, to be honest with you, but that's kind of where we're going. With this, we also have alerts that are coming out when we lose contact to the agent to say that there's something wrong in the location. And then we got a ton of ideas, right? But right now, that's all we have. I mean, we're trying to add 3G support for backup and all this other stuff. But I mean, there's more ideas than we're not short in ideas. It's just a matter of when to do them.
Right. That's that. I often tell people I got a million ideas. I just have no time to do any of them because it's.
I keep tired people. I need to start selling this thing and then right. I can do more.
Yeah, I feel your pain. So let's talk a little bit about that. Those notifications, those come over. You said you were on your iPhone. So if you're on your phone, you're out at the park or somewhere, and your network goes down or a camera goes offline or something like that at your house, you'd get a push notification to your phone?
Absolutely. You can get both an email and or a push notification to the phone. If you are in the kind of Domotz Pro professional version, you can add a team of into your user, and each one of them can customize their notification differently. So yeah, you get notified as soon as something is wrong.
That's pretty cool. So if I go out and Jason and I said that we're dealers and we would go out and set these up for our customers, I could have it notify us first, and then maybe the customer. Usually the clients don't even care to notice that kind of thing. But is it something?
We are coming out in the summertime with a customer facing up, which is going to be a much skinned down version of what the dealer gets, and it's going to give the customer some money or some value for the money that he's paying in servicing. And so notification can be one of those, and you as a dealer can configure what he can see or cannot see. You can configure what things he can turn power off and on. But also what we do for the client, and we just started doing this because right now we're just doing an internet test speed, and a packet test. but we're actually going down the route of assessing what we call quality of experience. So what we are working on is building a client inside the agent, for example, a browser, a YouTube client, a Skype client, a Netflix client. And so what we do, we simulate a session, and then we give a score to that session for streaming, packets lost, and whatever, which is objective. So we can tell you that your YouTube watching experience, it's a 3.7, and then we can tell you that your neighbors are at 4.3. So that you can go, and then we give data and history if you want to, and when you can go back to your telecom company and say, hey, I want to be 4.8 on my YouTube experience. So I'm gonna have a lot of. I'm not gonna have a lot of friends in this industry.
No, you're not. I can see that's going to be a problem coming up here. That's a really great idea. I got to say that giving the customer the ability to kind of, or the end user really just a lightweight version of what they're. Maybe if they're a power user, they would want to see that kind of stuff. But most of my customers I know wouldn't really care until something really went down, and then they end up calling us anyway. But I think that's a great idea, giving them the ability to just
get something.
Yeah, do something maybe proactively, or maybe they could reboot something without worrying about the $100,000 and $200,000 of equipment that we have shoved in a closet somewhere. They can feel empowered, I guess is what I'm looking for, to do a little bit of troubleshooting themselves. Very, very cool. I really like that. So you mentioned this earlier. You talked about remote access into the system, like remote desktop, like a Citrix client, go to my PC. How does that work? Is it like over a VPN? Is it secure?
No, well, it's secure, but it's not over a VPN, because that wouldn't be secure, handling what I hope to be, tens of thousands of homes. It's really on demand. So what's happening is that the agent, which is sitting on location, has a communication open, just a small communication line that when you get on your app, on your web app, and you want to talk to something, it sends a command. And what it does from the inside of the home, it opens a secure channel and a tunnel onto your device, very specific. So that you get redirected into that device. So essentially, what you're doing, you're on demand. You're taking a device in the home, you're putting it on the cloud temporarily with a secure connection just to you. And just to give you the idea of what I mean, just to you, right now, and I believe, at least until the last time I checked this, but other systems, without naming them, they do the same, similar thing, at least for HTTP. But if you copy that link that is on your browser to another browser, you send it to a friend, that guy is going to open the same connection to your machine. In our case, that's actually unique. There's a ton
very cool
between you and the machine. So yes, you are putting on demand your device on the cloud to be used, and when you're done, the connection closes and you're done.
Yeah, that's a really neat system, and I think that having that ability to do it in a secure way, and most importantly, an easy way and a scalable way, like you said, you've got ambitions to be doing this at scale, and it sounds like you've got a well-conceived plan for going about that. I want to, speaking of business plans, focus for just a second on we talked briefly about the consumer-facing version of the app, but for someone like myself or anyone else who's listening who either does home technology as a profession, or maybe they're thinking about it and considering your solution, what does the business end of that? I know you have a dashboard that's presented to me if I'm a customer of yours. What can you tell us about that business management dashboard?
It's really built to give you an immediate overview of A, are there any problems with any of your clients? And B, where are they? So that you can literally click and point, and in 2 or 3 clicks, get to the problem straight away. And as soon as we put on the SNMP functionality, which is happening this month, we'll also give you a whole bunch of more background about how much bandwidth that thing is using, or where is it connected physically, or what is it connected to, and how many hops is it from the place where you're trying to use it. So it's all about awareness and ability. It's basically, I'm giving you the chance to deliver first and second line support to your customers, short of and of course, rebooting power, it's somewhat a physical activity, but we can replicate that if you have the right equipment. So I'm giving you your best shot not to have to get on that truck and visit the client, really.
Right. And you talked about resetting power, and one thing we didn't touch on when we talked about power is what about PoE power management? Do you guys have the ability to reset PoE switches at a port level if you've got maybe a PoE camera or a Wi-Fi access point that's acting up?
Absolutely. That is what I refer when I say SNMP managed switches. That functionality is coming up at the end of this month. So May 5th, actually, to be exact. So we're
gotcha. So right around the corner.
Yeah. I mean, that was part of the MVP for having this. So essentially, we came back from Vegas in January, and we've been in a rush to catch up with the functionalities that most other systems have, and trying to surpass them. And I think by time that we ship our boxes, which is going to be in May, we're going to have them all. So, and this is the biggest one, of course. I mean, PoE, ability to switch off, power, and it'll be pretty cool, actually. I'll get you guys set up with one of this thing, and so you can test it.
That'd be great. Yeah, definitely. Well, listen, we're kind of running short on our time here. I found the conversation really interesting. I think it sounds like you guys are doing all the right things, and we definitely are keen to keep an eye on how things go moving forward. I'd like to move into wrapping up our conversation here with just a high-level question that we didn't really touch on, and that's just the importance of these remote technology management services, and where do you see the importance of these services fitting into the future of the smart home and of home technology?
I think it's a huge market, and I think in the sense, United States is at the forefront of this. All the big players. I mean, cloud-based support for electronics, for manufacturers, for retailers, for people is actually a hugely hot topic right now in all the big players. And as I said, technology is not going away. It's just the trend is set. I mean, there's theoretically 26 billion devices attached to the network in 3 years' time. I mean, it's happening. So I think people will need support, and this thing is here to stay.
Yeah, well, I'm sold. So, and I'm sure some people, with all the network problems Jason have had for the last couple of weeks, I'm in. So, if I wanted to find out more, and of course our listeners, if they wanted to find out more, where would they go?
The best thing is actually to try it out. Just go on the website. You can sign for a free trial. We're giving 90 days we're still giving 90 days free trial. It's going to get to 30 soon, but just go www.domots.com and just sign up. There's no credit card. There's nothing. And just try it out. very
cool. And I don't know if we touched too much on the pricing. You have a flat fee rate that you charge for the price, correct?
Yeah, $2.99 per month per network. All you can eat approach. We don't ask for anything else.
Excellent. Well, Domenico, thank you very much for joining us on Home Tech. Appreciate your time. If people wanted to reach out to you personally and ask you questions or get in touch with you, how would they do that?
Just send me an email, domenico@domots.com. Or, I mean, we all, I'm working around the clock, and I help out on everything. So, yeah, very happy to talk to anybody.
Sounds like it.
Yeah, well, thanks so much for joining us, Domenico. We really appreciate it. We wish you all the best of luck with Domots, and certainly feel free to keep us posted moving forward. And with that, we will let you go and look forward to reconnecting soon.
Thank you very much. It was really nice. Thank you.
All right. Take care.
Bye, guys.